I had just stepped off the elevator, keycard in hand, ready to decompress from a long day of client meetings and showroom visits. The hallway was quiet, just the soft hum of the building's central system. But as I approached my penthouse door, I felt it. Bass thumping faintly through the walls, the kind of sound that didn't belong in my sanctuary. My heart sank. This wasn't a party building. This wasn't a party home. This was my home. 41 years old, self-made, interior designer in Manhattan, and this place was the one space in my life that didn't require negotiation. No children, no chaos, just curated calm. I had worked for every inch of it. Late nights, impossible clients, barely any sleep. No help from my husband's side. They liked to act like I had married up, when really, I'd only married over. I stepped inside, expecting silence and the scent of the eucalyptus candle I left burning earlier. Instead, I was hit with a gust of perfume, laughter, and the clack of heels on marble floors. 3 women I had never seen before were sprawled on my couch, wine glasses in hand, lip gloss smudged on the rim. The music blared from my speaker system. Andra, my husband's sister, was in the kitchen, my kitchen, opening another bottle of my Sauvignon Blanc like it was hers. She looked up and grinned. "Hey, Madeline. Hope you don't mind. We just needed a place to crash and, well, your view is everything." I didn't respond. I stood there, stunned, trying to locate a thread of logic in this mess. My silk robe was draped over one of her friend's shoulders. There were foundation smears on the edge of my cream leather chaise. One of them had kicked off their stilettos, red bottoms, right by the glass coffee table I'd had shipped from Milan. And my husband, not in sight. I reached for my phone, fingers stiff with fury. Dialed him. He picked up on the 3rd ring. "Hey, babe," he said, too casual. "You home?" "You knew about this?" I asked, already knowing the answer. A pause. Then, "Yeah, Andra needed a break. She just broke up with what's-his-name. I told her she could chill there for a bit." "And the 3 women with her? They're just friends. It's not a big deal." "Not a big deal?" I swallowed hard. "You didn't think to ask me first?" "She's going through a lot. Be nice, okay? Don't make this about you." He hung up before I could respond. Be nice. That phrase stuck like a thorn. Be nice while they wiped their shoes on my rules? Be nice while my boundaries got trampled in Louboutin heels? I hung up, slowly. The noise behind me pressed in again. Laughter, a bottle popping, someone playing with my Bluetooth settings. I stepped into the living room, silent, scanning the damage. Lipstick-stained napkins, a wine ring on my glass table, half a burrito on the coffee tray. My eyes fell on a candle, one of the expensive ones from Paris, burnt almost to the bottom. They didn't just visit, they nested. I walked through the penthouse, room by room. In the guest bathroom, my moisturizer had been dug into, fingernail trails left in the jar. Someone had tried on my heels, left one of them tipped near the closet entrance. Everywhere I looked, I saw disrespect. Andra was doing her usual thing, pretending it was all harmless. She wasn't malicious, just entitled. Last year at dinner, she had made a dig about my fancy job and how people like me always had something to prove. My husband had laughed then, brushed it off with, "That's just how she jokes." But tonight wasn't a joke. I said nothing to her. Not yet. I just walked through the wreckage like a museum guide documenting loss. By the time they stumbled out to the balcony to smoke, or whatever it is people do to pretend they're still 22, I was already back in the kitchen. I began cleaning, wiping down counters, tossing napkins, closing cabinets left open like their manners. But my mind, it wasn't still. I started listing things mentally, how often this kind of thing had happened. How many times my space, my voice, my presence had been dismissed. It wasn't just Andra. It was the system around her, the assumptions, the justifications. This wasn't a crack. It was a pattern. I didn't yell, didn't demand they leave. That wasn't me. Instead, I watched Andra post an Instagram story from my balcony, captioned with "healing with a view" and my skyline as her backdrop. Watched her tag my penthouse like it was a hotel suite. Watched the likes roll in, her friends giggling behind her, one of them throwing up a peace sign over my city. And then I turned away. I walked to the bedroom. closed the door behind me, sat on the edge of my bed, and stared at my reflection in the mirror. Not angry, not hurt, just done. The apartment was quiet again, too quiet. That kind of silence that sits heavy after chaos, like smoke still lingering long after the fire's gone. I got up early, still in my robe, walked barefoot across the cold marble, and took it all in. Wine stains on the counter. Someone's towel draped over my kitchen chair. Definitely not one of ours. My robe had made it back to the hook, but I could still smell someone else's perfume on it. The bedroom, an empty bottle on the nightstand that hadn't been there before. A dish, chipped, probably from someone tossing their keys into the sink. All these little marks they left behind, like animals tracking mud through a house they didn't build. It hit me then. Not just the mess, but the feeling. That old, dull ache of always being the one left to clean up. Not just dishes, but feelings, arguments, tension, and always without thanks, always expected, never acknowledged. I was wiping down the stove when I heard the front door open. He walked in like it was just another morning, joggers on, hair wet from a shower at the gym. He set his phone on the counter and started making coffee. "Morning," he said, not looking up. I didn't answer right away, just kept wiping, one circular motion after another. He didn't notice. When I finally spoke, it was measured. "You didn't think to ask me how I felt about last night?" He poured the coffee, blew on it like he had all the time in the world. "Come on, Madeline, don't start your day like this." "Like what? Like the person who lives here?" He sighed, that long, exaggerated kind that said he was already tired of this conversation. "She's going through a lot. Andra's been dumped again, and her job let her go last month. You know that." "There's empathy," I said. "And then there's enabling. She needed somewhere safe. She's family." That word, family, used like a crowbar to pry open every locked door. "And I'm what? Furniture?" He set the mug down a little too hard. "You're being cold, like always." I stared at him, eyes level. "No, I'm being clear." He turned away, muttering something I didn't catch, but I didn't need to. I knew that tone. I'd heard it before, years ago, when he skipped my work gala because Andra needed someone to talk to about her dog dying. Or the time she crashed our anniversary dinner, crying over a parking ticket. She was always going through something, and I was always expected to smile and make space. Later that afternoon, after he left for errands, I walked into the kitchen to tidy up again. Andra's purse was still sitting on the counter, left behind, probably by accident, or maybe just another sign that she felt entitled to leave things here. I debated for a second before checking inside, not to snoop, just to see if she'd left anything she'd want back. That's when I found it. A small receipt, folded neatly between her lipstick and hand sanitizer. $4.95, key duplication. The date was yesterday. The shop? Just 2 blocks from our building. I stared at it for a long time, let the weight of it settle. She had taken the spare key from the drawer in the hallway, the one we kept just in case. She'd had it copied. This wasn't just about overstaying a welcome. This wasn't emotional distress. This was intrusion. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I took the receipt and walked to my bedroom, placed it in the drawer where I keep the property documents, slid it under the folder labeled contingencies. I sat on the edge of the bed, hands resting on my knees, and I breathed. It reminded me of another time, years ago, when someone had stepped into my world uninvited. A former client who took credit for my design at a showcase. I'd swallowed my pride, smiled through it, tried to stay professional. And for what? They stole, and I stayed silent. I told myself then I wouldn't do that again. And yet, here I was. Not anymore. That evening, I didn't bring it up to my husband. Not yet. Instead, I opened my laptop and began to read. Tenant rights. Property access laws. What constitutes invasion of privacy in New York? I jotted notes, bookmarked pages. I wasn't just irritated, I was building a case. Being angry wouldn't change anything. But being informed, that was power. I used to think silence was the high road, that maturity meant not making a scene. But now I saw it for what it was. Permission. Silence had become the language of being ignored. By nightfall, I had reset the digital lock on the front door. A small, quiet change. Just one number off from the old code. Not to keep her out. No. To see if she tried to get in. I don't know why that morning took me back to the first time she moved in. Maybe because the air felt just as heavy. Maybe because the same ache sat in my chest, that low throb of being unseen in your own home. It was 5 years ago. Andra had nowhere else to go, so my husband said yes. I stayed quiet then. That silence bought me 8 months of her temporary stay. 8 months of my clothes disappearing, my car running out of gas, my food vanishing from the fridge. I remember finding one of my blazers crumpled under her gym bag and asking her calmly, "Did you wear this to work?" She didn't even look up. "Yeah, I didn't think you'd mind," I told my husband. He laughed, said, "It's just clothes, don't be dramatic." That's when I started shrinking, 1 small inch at a time, not visibly, not where anyone could point and say, "There, that's where she gave up." But I felt it. In the way I stopped inviting friends over. In how I stayed longer at the office just to avoid walking into my own space. I thought I'd buried all that. But as I sat at the breakfast bar that morning, stirring my coffee, I realized I hadn't buried anything. I'd just been carrying it. Quietly. Later that afternoon, I finished my site visit earlier than planned. Caught the subway back, craving a moment to myself before dinner. I stepped out of the elevator, and something was off. I could hear laughter, deep, careless, echoing down the hall. I unlocked the door and walked in. They were back. Andra, on my couch, her legs crossed like she paid rent here. Same 2 friends, sprawled across the living room like they were in some hotel suite. One was wearing my silk robe, the one I saved for Sundays. Another had dumped takeout containers on the counter without a second glance. My voice didn't shake. "How did you get in?" Andra barely looked up. "Oh, the door was open," she lied, fast and smooth, but I knew I'd locked it. I'd reset the code, changed the key placement. She had to have used the copy she made. I didn't argue, just pulled out my phone, screen dimmed, and hit record. I caught everything. Their voices, their laughs, the careless way one of them knocked over a vase and muttered, "Oops." One of her friends turned to me and said, "Your brother said it's cool if we chill here. He said you're out all day anyway." I smiled. Of course. Inside, I wasn't smiling. I waited. Let them think they were winning. Let them think I was still that quiet woman from 5 years ago who'd bite her tongue and clean up after them. When they finally left, 2 hours later, I locked every door, slid every bolt. I took the spare keys and hid them in a place no one could casually find. I didn't call my husband, didn't send a text. I needed space to think, not react. I sat at my desk, pulled up the building's security log, noted the times, the access points. Then opened a folder on my desktop I titled Incidents. Date-stamped photos, notes, videos, quiet proof. "You teach people how to treat you by what you tolerate," I whispered to myself, "and I've been too generous with my lessons." The next morning, I reached out to a lawyer I'd done design work for last year, asked for a meeting. "Nothing urgent," I said, but I think she heard something in my voice because she booked me in right away. That night, I pulled out a notepad and began writing. Not a journal, not feelings. Boundaries. What I will no longer accept, what I will no longer explain, what I will no longer tolerate in my own home. This wasn't just about Andra, this was about everything I'd swallowed to keep the peace. I used to think love was compromise, but now I saw it. Enabling isn't love, it's fear dressed up as patience. I walked to the fridge, pinned a simple note up with a magnet. "We need to talk." "Not about your sister, about us." And then I sat down. I wasn't waiting for him to come home anymore. I was waiting to see who he really was when he did. I chopped vegetables, set the dining table for 2 with calm precision. The knives were sharp, the plates aligned. My apartment smelled of rosemary and lemon. Outside, Seattle's late afternoon light bled in through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows along the hardwood. My husband would arrive soon. And yet, nothing about the moment felt peaceful. I sliced peppers and onions, heard my own breath steady. I didn't want anger. I wanted clarity. The silence in my chest had hardened into something sharp, poised. Sometimes silence isn't surrender, it's setup. When he came through the door, in his usual jacket, tired from work but smiling, I didn't greet him. He kissed my cheek. I nodded. We sat. He asked, "Long day?" I didn't answer, just poured wine. The first sip tasted like cold resolve. Over dinner, I spoke, not with shouts or tears, with facts. About Andra entering uninvited, about the nights I came home from work only to step over her friends sprawled on my couch, about the voice note I heard of laughter in my kitchen, the Instagram post with my skyline as her backdrop, about the security footage showing tailgate entries, doors unlocked when I was out. He looked at his plate, played with the corner of his napkin. "I thought you'd understand," he said. "She's under pressure." I put down my fork. Understanding is different from allowing boundaries to be walked all over. Permission to hurt isn't love. He opened his mouth, closed it, avoided my eyes. "This isn't about the penthouse," I said. "It's about what you believe I'll tolerate." His silence echoed. After that, I sent Andra a message. No emojis. No pleading. 4 sentences. "Do not enter my home again. If you do, I will pursue legal action. You have been warned. I expect your respect." I copied my husband into that thread. Then I forwarded it to my lawyer friend and saved the timestamp. Hours later, Andra replied. Laughing face. "Wow, sis, calm down." The kind of mockery that assumes weakness. That kind of mockery picks at a bruise no one sees. I didn't answer. I felt the burn of that laugh. Then I felt something harder, tightening in my chest, yes, but also something rising, clarity. I remembered quiet moments, moments I lost count of the times I nodded when I wanted to say no, times I swallowed words, times I let her cross lines because I kept waiting. For what? For apologies? For recognition? Probably. He stood there, phone in hand, reading the message. "I need time to think," he said. "Take all the time you want, from your brother's place," I said. My voice didn't shake. He moved slowly, packed a bag, didn't ask where to put his things. I held the door open, watched him leave. My hands didn't tremble. The city lights started blinking on outside. It was evening. I walked back into the kitchen. My phone buzzed. "Your sister-in-law tried to access the building again. Should we involve security?" I stared at the message, felt the walls around me shift, silent walls I had built without words. I came home to silence for the first time in weeks. My husband had left as I asked. The apartment was too quiet. No laughter, no soft footsteps, no Andra's perfume mingling with my own air. It felt heavy, like waiting for something I didn't want, but knew would come. In the hallway, I saw an envelope addressed to him in Andra's handwriting. My name wasn't there. I held it for a moment. Didn't open it. Respect, or what I thought respect looked like. I took a photo of the envelope, just the front. Then I texted him. "Andra dropped something for you." Silence answered. No thumbs up, no read receipt, no anything. I stood still. My heart pounded. Wary, not angry yet, but the gut twist of betrayal was warming. The next morning, at my studio, the silence cracked. My phone buzzed. A message from him. "Thanks for helping her open up. She's sorry." That sorry was a red flag. I asked for a photo of the letter. He sent a screenshot. Every word that followed looked polished, careful. "Thanks for always giving her grace. Let's keep peace." That was not from me. The tone, the phrasing, none of mine. It was manufactured. I felt the coldness settle. This wasn't apology. It was manipulation. At lunch, I printed the screenshot. Highlighted phrases, words she would never use, phrases he definitely wouldn't approve. I kept it as evidence, because at that moment I realized, it's not enough to feel betrayed. I have to prove it. I arranged to meet my friend, the lawyer. Over coffee, I asked about misrepresentation and tenant privacy. She said it may not be criminal, but yes, it could support a harassment claim or even a legal order of protection if things escalate. I felt numb, but my mind was already building a map of proof, security logs, previous chats, the screenshot, not emotional, tactical. Later that afternoon, I came home to lights on. Nothing major stolen, but a cup left dirty, a dish misplaced, the front door slightly ajar. My blood ran cold. I called building security, confirmed that a guest code, my husband's old one, was used. I reset every digital lock I had control over. Covertly installed a small camera by the entry. I looked in the mirror in the entryway and whispered, "The next time someone pretends to speak for me, they'll be talking to a judge." I didn't cry, didn't scream. I stood in that hallway, quiet, but not broken. The lie had been sent. The manipulation made visible. I chose clarity over chaos. The first night alone wasn't peaceful. It was loaded, like waiting for the second shoe to drop, except you already knew who threw the first one. He left just like I told him to. No fighting, no begging. He packed light, said he needed time to think. And then the door closed. I made a cup of tea and tried to sit still, but silence has weight. It presses on your ribs when you're used to noise. I walked past the hallway table and spotted it. An envelope with his name written in big, looping cursive. Andra's handwriting. No doubt. I didn't open it, didn't need to, just took a photo and texted him. "Andra dropped something for you." Hours passed. No reply. I stared at that envelope like it was ticking. By morning, I'd almost forgotten about it, until his message popped up mid-meeting. "Thanks for helping her open up. She's sorry." What? My fingers went cold. I wrote back, "What are you talking about?" He sent a screenshot. A letter. A handwritten one. I knew immediately it wasn't mine. It started with, "Thank you for always giving her grace." Ended with, "Let's keep peace." A smooth, gentle tone. Too smooth, too gentle. Not my style. Not my words. She forged it. She wrote a letter, signed it like it came from me, and handed it to him behind my back. And he believed it. I didn't respond to him. I sat down, printed the screenshot, circled every phrase that felt foreign. Her word choices, her loops and hearts in the eyes. A fake apology dressed in my voice. I wasn't livid. I was surgical. There's a difference. I called my lawyer friend and asked if forged letters counted as legal violations. She said, "Not criminal, but definitely harassment, especially if it escalates." We met for coffee. I brought the printout. She read it once and said, "This is emotional fraud, plain and simple." I didn't cry. I didn't rant. I asked how to document everything properly. That afternoon, I visited the building office. Asked for entry logs, security footage, timestamps. I needed to know when Andra came, how she got in, and who buzzed her. The concierge didn't flinch. He said, "You're not the first tenant with family drama." That told me enough. At home, I started a new folder. Legal, Andra. Screenshots, photos, logs. The fake letter went right on top. I whispered to myself, she didn't just lie. She used my voice to silence me. That cut deeper than yelling ever could. It's easy to see silence as weakness. But there's another kind of silence. The one where people pretend you said something you didn't. That kind turns dangerous. I came back late that evening. The lights were on. I know I didn't leave them that way. Nothing was missing, but something was wrong. A dirty cup in the sink, a dish out of place, a hallway door left half open. I called security again. "Yes, ma'am," the voice said. "Guest code was used today. Your husband's old one." That was the last straw. I reset every digital lock in that unit, installed a discreet camera just above the door frame, labeled it air vent maintenance in the request log. No one questioned it. Before bed, I stood by the hallway mirror. I looked myself in the eyes. "The next time someone pretends to speak for me," I said softly, "they'll be talking to a judge." I opened my phone and saw the notification. Video link trending. My thumb hovered. I tapped. There I was, in the background, my living room, the skyline view behind Andra and her friends as they laughed, mocking my absence. They joked about who runs this place, as if the only reason I lived here was for a view to post on Instagram. One commented, "Looks like your sister-in-law owns the place more than you do." My heart raced, chest tight. I closed the phone. The weight of every ignored boundary, every whispered insult, every apology denied, it all came flooding back. I remembered wrapping coats, cleaning messes made by those who treat your home like a lobby. I thought about how many times I stepped over the mess because I believed love means patience. But that night, the humiliation stung worse than any physical bruise. I sat, staring at the glow of the window reflecting nothing but my own silhouette. Clarity came sharp. This goes somewhere. Enough. Later, I reached out to Dane, my neighbor. He'd said he heard people down the hallway late. I asked if his building camera had captured anything. He agreed. 2 hours later, I watched footage with him on my laptop screen. And there it was. Andra letting people in with her spare key, entering while I was out, walking around, luggage, bags, laughter. Timestamps matched ones in the fake apology screenshot I'd kept. The scenes lined up, the robe, the takeout, the laughter. The look in her face when she thought no one was watching. It felt like being gaslit in broad daylight. I felt vindicated and furious. Every boundary I'd tried to draw was shown as invisible to her. I opened my browser and drafted a post. Title, "My Home, My Rules." I didn't want drama. I wanted truth. I laid out facts, video stills, the forged letter, the key entry logs. I didn't name call, just evidence. I clicked publish. The response was immediate. Some patted me on the back in comments. Others questioned whether I was overreacting, yet some defended her out of loyalty, shouting that family should stick together. My husband messaged me, "Don't drag this online." I typed back, "Truth isn't drama, it's responsibility." I hit send. That night, I couldn't sleep. Lying in bed, I listened to the distant hum of highway traffic, the glow of my phone lighting the dark. Women in threads said, "I've been you." Others said, "Good for you." I realized this wasn't about getting praise, it was about being visible, about standing up for the right to feel safe in your own home. My husband confronted Andra with evidence. She reacted flustered, defensive, like people do when cornered. She said she didn't mean harm. He looked at me, eyes searching for something. Apology, confession. I held the strength to stay silent. Then, early morning, I saw her post. Another apology. But comments were brutal. Fake much? Seen the video, notice how it wasn't posted until she knew public opinion was heating up? Don't believe a single word. I watched them call her out. Part of me felt relief. Part of me felt sorrow that this needed to happen in public for people to see. And then his text came across. "I still love you, but I can't be the person who watches this happen." I stared at it for a long time. Loved me? Or loved what was easy, watching, doing nothing. I pressed send, no reply. I stood in the dark bathroom, hands on cool tile, letting the silence fill me. I wasn't going to wait anymore. I'm away on business, 60 miles from home, in a hotel room that smells faintly of carpet and coffee. My phone is on the nightstand. It buzzes once, then again. I stare at the ceiling, trying to convince myself that peace might still be possible. I open my journal and write, "What does peace look like when silence isn't safety anymore?" I think about boundaries, not just fencing off my space, but what windows into respect look like. I try to calm the unease knitting inside me. Still, there's that alert message. Security alert, door entry logged at 8:14 p.m. My blood goes cold. I pause. I didn't authorize anything, and I don't like surprises. I call security. They confirm the entry. Andra attempted to open the smart lock. Tampered, they say. This time, something broke. The lock mechanism was damaged. The guard's voice was flat. "We detained her." I close my eyes. Arrest. My throat tightens. My husband calls. "I wasn't home," he says. I didn't know she'd try again. I listen, letting his words wash over me. No blame. Just this question. "Do you still think this is a family matter?" He doesn't answer. I ask for photos, copies of the police report, statements from building staff. I want every record. I want every truth. I get off the call and reach out to my lawyer. I describe the fact pattern: letter forged, insults online, trespass, damage, misuse of codes. She confirms I have solid footing to file for a permanent restraining order. I breathe in hard, pull up past screenshots, messages, logs. I think about the image I've held up for neighbors, for people online who said, "Hold your peace." Now I reject that peace. I choose control. When women don't report, it's not because they're weak, it's because they've been conditioned to believe their safety comes second. Not anymore. Back home, I can feel the difference even before I cross the threshold. I change the locks. 3 new cameras installed, each one angled at entry points. Surveillance alerts activated, the kind that demand your attention. I write him an email. "You're welcome to return, but Andra's name is now permanently banned from my life. There are no second chances." I send it. Minutes later, I see his car missing from the garage. A weight lifts, just slightly. I stand on the balcony that evening, cold air brushing against my skin, looking out over the city lights. There's quiet, but it's mine. I didn't beg. I didn't scream. I reclaimed it. I woke up earlier than usual, not because of noise or stress or habit, just peace, the kind that doesn't jolt you but gently pulls you toward the day. I opened the balcony door. The wind rustled, cool against my arms. No sirens, no voices, just wind. I wrapped my hands around the coffee mug and stood there, still. No one was in my space. No one had to be managed or silenced. That absence didn't feel lonely, it felt earned. I looked back into the apartment behind me, the same walls that once witnessed silence as survival. Now, they stood for something else. I could name every moment where I gave in to keep the peace, folded a towel, cleaned a dish, stayed quiet when I should have screamed. And I saw it now for what it was. Not strength, not grace, just fear disguised as patience. That chapter closed. I didn't heal by running. I healed by staying and reclaiming it inch by inch. He showed up around noon. Quiet, with a cardboard box and eyes that didn't quite meet mine. There was no shouting, no grand finale, just the end, plain and real. He said, "You were always stronger than I knew." I nodded. "Thanks for confirming what I already suspected." He paused, tried to soften the air. "She's been through a lot. Andra, she didn't mean," I cut in. "She chose, and now she lives with those choices. Same goes for you." He didn't fight it, just lifted the last box, nodded once, and stepped out. I closed the door behind him, didn't cry, didn't linger. A ding from my phone, text from my lawyer. Restraining order confirmed, bail denied. I stared at the screen a moment longer than I needed, not out of joy, but finality. I walked through the place slowly, room by room, ran my fingers along the edge of the kitchen counter, straightened the painting in the hallway, tossed out the throw pillows she'd picked. I opened the guest room door and knew this space had to change. I grabbed a roller and paint, turned the walls from that sickly beige into a soft, open white. My phone rang. It was Anna, my old friend. "Still want to do that Napa trip?" I laughed for the first time in days. Finally! I sat down that night and flipped open my journal. I thought about something my grandmother used to say. "Peace isn't quiet, it's the space no one else fills." I wrote that down, then added, "Peace isn't the absence of noise, it's the presence of self." Days passed. The air in the penthouse shifted, not because of someone else's mood, but because I opened the windows. I returned to my design work, picked up a new client renovating a top-floor condo, the kind of project I'd put off for years. I started sharing small pieces of my story on a blog, anonymous, but real. Turns out, there were hundreds of women with stories just like mine. I wasn't alone, and neither were they. That evening, I stood on my balcony again, same wind. But I wasn't guarding anymore. I wasn't watching. I was simply there, not in battle, not in fear, just living in a space I built back from broken. The world below kept moving. And me? I stood taller. Not because I'd forgotten the past, but because I'd finally outgrown it. What was once my prison is now my fortress, and no one enters uninvited.